So chapter 5 is actually a chapter I did not do with the class last year. So I'll kind of be figuring this one out as we go. But when I decide which chapters that we're going to do from this book, since we don't have time to do everything, since we're only really going through this in a semester's time, I try to think of things that I think that within 4 to 5 years after high school, that these are the kinds of things that you are going to face, that you're going to have to encounter. So you're going to have to probably think about credit cards. You're going to have an opportunity as a college student to probably get a credit card. You need to know what that means and what that looks like and what you have to pay and stuff like that. Hopefully, you start thinking about saving and being able to invest. You will probably get some sort of a job, whether it's a job at your school, whether it's a job outside of school. So we're going to look at things like employment basics. Why is it that you don't get paid what they said they were going to pay you? What's this thing about taxes that I have to pay and filling out a tax form? Like, that's all stuff you're going to encounter. And so, for better or worse, it may be a curse that I have children in college as we go through this. Having gone through this last summer, the process of Bryce getting a car, I decided that maybe the car chapter really is a good one for us to go through, because more than likely, within the time that you're in college, or within a few years after high school, you're probably going to have a car. Chances are pretty good you're going to end up with one sometime during that 4 to 5 year period. And so again, just kind of going through it with Bryce and realizing what he did and did not realize would be part of having a car is what made me think, like, yeah, this is probably a good chapter to go through as well, so that you are knowledgeable about just what all goes into owning a car. Whether you buy it yourself, whether your parents help you buy it, whether your parents are just letting you use a car for a while that's technically still completely theirs, there's going to be certain costs involved. There's going to be certain responsibilities that you're going to have. So I think this is a good chapter for us to include. So the first lesson is actually just about, like, what if you want to buy a car? What would you do? Well, chances probably are going to be pretty good that you're going to be looking for a used car. There aren't a whole lot of college students that I know that are going to walk into a dealership and go, hey, that 2017 Camaro over there looks pretty sweet. I'm going to buy it. All right? Not too many of you are going to be able to do that. So probably your first car is going to be a used car. And a lot of times to buy used cars, you will go to things that have what we call classified ads. Now, that has changed a lot in the last 10 to 15 years. 10 or 15 years ago, if I was living in Iowa and I was interested in buying a used car, I would probably do one of two things. I would either go to a dealer and look at their used car selection, because dealers do have used car sections as well as new car sections, or I would have gone to the newspaper. And I would have opened up the newspaper to the classified ads section, and I would have started looking at cars that people were trying to sell. Okay? And actually, I'm going to show you Mackenzie's real quick, because hers is probably she's got an example that's the closest to looking like an actual newspaper car ad. I'm just going to use hers for a second. Oh, where'd this go? Here it is. So you would probably see something that looked a lot like this. If the seller was really willing to spend the big bucks, they might put a picture with it. more than likely what you would get would be something like this. Just a very short little blurb that tries to explain the car enough to make you interested, but not so much to cost a lot. Because when you put a classified ad into a newspaper, they're going to charge you basically by how big your ad is. Now, different newspapers are going to do that different ways. Some newspapers charge you by the line, and they'll make a set price for so many lines and then charge you for every extra line beyond that. Some newspapers are going to charge you by the word. There'll be a set price for so many words and then charge you for every extra word beyond that. And some will do it by the character. So every letter, every space, every character, a certain number of characters is a set price, and then every character after that is going to cost you more. So you want to be able to present enough information about your vehicle so that someone's interested, and yet not make it such a big article that it's really going to cost you a lot of money just to put an ad in the paper to try to get your car sold. And especially when you start talking about cars that are like, a 2000 Honda, that's a 16-year-old car. Like, you do not want to invest a whole lot of money in just advertising that you want to sell this car. Okay? So that was kind of the way to do it 10, 15 years ago. Is you would probably go to the newspaper or you would go to a dealer and look at their used cars on the lot. A lot has changed in the last 10, 15 years. This is how most people do it now. Very few people will actually go to a newspaper anymore to look for a car. And it was funny because I thought, well, I just wonder, just some of the newspapers around where I live, I wonder what they list. They all have online newspapers now. So I wonder what their car classified section is like. So I started with the Des Moines Register, which is probably the biggest newspaper in Iowa. Now, I know it's Iowa, so it's not that big, but it's the biggest newspaper in Iowa. It comes out of the capital, which is Des Moines. And it is a newspaper that is actually distributed throughout the state. So even though it's called the Des Moines Register, it is not just a city newspaper. It is distributed throughout the state. So it's our biggest newspaper. And for jobs, when Mr. Gordon and I were first looking for jobs, and then when we went back after Brazil and we're trying to get jobs back in Iowa again, that was the place to go for job listings. Because especially in education, everyone posted their job in the Des Moines Register. Okay? So I thought, well, I wonder what the car section looks like. So I went online to their online paper, went to the classified ads, went to cars, and what opened up was the website cars.com. So the newspaper doesn't even have their own car classified section anymore. They have partnered up with a website, in this case cars.com, and cars.com allows you to pick the area where you want to find a car. So you go onto cars.com, you pick Des Moines as your area, and then it'll bring up the cars that are for sale in the Des Moines area that have been registered on cars.com. So then I thought, well, I wonder what a paper that's maybe just a little bit smaller would do. So I went to the Cedar Rapids Gazette next. So Cedar Rapids is a fairly good-sized city that's not too far from where our house is. Not as big as Des Moines, but a good-sized city with, a couple of malls and lots of eating places and whatever. That's where you go if you want to do something. So I thought, well, I wonder what their newspaper would be like. So I went to their newspaper, went to the classified ads, and they have a website called corridorcars.com. Now, you have to understand why it's called that. Any news organization that's within our area talks about covering news in the corridor. And so there's this strip, sort of, from Iowa City to Cedar Rapids to Des Moines, that all of our TV news and most of the newspaper news, that's the area they cover, and all the little towns that are within that. And so they call that section the corridor. Okay, news in the corridor. New corridor, new, whatever. Ugh. Okay, I just get sick of hearing it all the time when we're back. But it's the corridor. So it's not like a national website like cars.com. Someone has gone and put together this website, but it's more local. It is really meant to just be for cars in the Iowa City, Cedar Rapids, Dubuque area. Okay? And you can go anywhere in that area, and you can go to little Manchester, which is where our house is, or Monticello, which is my hometown, or whatever. It's all within that section. But it's a much more localized thing. But still, the Cedar Rapids Gazette newspaper does not have their own classified car section anymore. They have partnered with whoever set up this website, and that's where you go if you click on the cars. Okay? So I thought, okay, well, I wonder what really small newspapers still do. So then I went to my hometown newspaper, which was the Monticello Express. Monticello is a town of maybe 3,300 people, so pretty small. And we have a paper that comes out once a week on Wednesdays. And so I was like, I wonder what they do. So I went to their classified section, and I clicked on cars, and nothing came up. Because nobody advertises in the newspaper anymore. So even though they had a supposedly car classified section, nobody does it that way anymore. So even if someone in Monticello, this small little town, where no, the newspaper is not connected with some car website, but if someone in Monticello wanted to sell a car, they're probably not going to put an ad in the Monticello Express. They're probably going to go to Craigslist. Right? They're going to go and advertise on something like Craigslist, which is easy. You can get an account. It's easy to put stuff up and just do it that way. So Craigslist has kind of become the new classified section. What we used to find in the newspaper as being the classified ads, Craigslist has kind of become that. You want to sell a car, you want to sell a lawnmower, you want to sell an old stereo system, like you go to Craigslist and do that. But it used to be back in the day, and not even that far ago in the day, like I'm not talking my grandparents' time, like I'm talking 10 years ago, like on Sundays, you guys remember living in the States on Sundays and getting the Sunday paper, which would be like this big, right? Because it had all of the sales ads from all the stores in your area, and it had all the classifieds from the week. Like you wanted to find anything, you could find it in that Sunday paper. And you would have the comics, right? The comics would always be in the Sunday paper. Like, that sucker, I'm not kidding, would stand this tall when they flopped it down on your doorstep. Sunday paper was huge. And I can remember, I mean, Mr. Gordon especially, I wasn't that big into, I just wanted to see the ads. What's on sale this week? But I can remember, like, going to Mr. Gordon's family, and it would be like a family event to read through the Sunday paper after church. Like everyone would sort of take their sections, and you'd read through your section, and then switch. And it would take all afternoon to pour over the Sunday Des Moines Register, right? And that doesn't happen as much anymore. One, people don't read the newspaper as much as they used to. And two, these kinds of ads don't show up in the newspaper like they used to. They show up in places like Craigslist or on other websites. Okay, so just taking your guys' examples here, we have found cars on things like geoexpat.com, autotrader.com. Emily, where'd you find yours?
PhilippinesUsedCar.com.
Say again?
PhilippinesUsedCar.com.
PhilippinesUsedCar.com, okay. Parkers.com.uk, so we've got some British cars here. Newcar.com, there's another auto trader, there's another auto trader. So those are the kinds of places that people are going to go looking for cars now. Because most of these places, especially the ones in the US, tend to be national websites that allow you to then narrow down where you want your search to be. So if I want to just look for a car in the Kansas City area, I pick Kansas City. If I just want to look for a car in the Los Angeles area, then I can pick Los Angeles. But if I'm looking for a car in Los Angeles and all of a sudden I want to decide that I want to look for one in Des Moines, I can switch within the same website. I don't have to go somewhere else to do that. Okay? So, let's just pick a couple of these as examples here and take a look at them. Man, some of you have expensive tastes. Okay, I got this up here. Oh, I like that one. That's a truck. So we got a 2012 Ram 2500 Mega Cab. Do you know what a Mega Cab is?
Is it almost like a moving truck where you still stuff on the back?
Nope.
Is it that 4-seat?
Yeah, because it's got the 4 doors. So the cab on a truck is this part. This is what's called the cab. So usually trucks like this are 2-door. And the back window is right behind the seat. That's kind of the standard. Okay? If you have an extended cab, then it means you have a little bit of space between the seat and the window, but not really enough for anyone bigger than like 9 years old to sit in. Tori still sits in her grandpa's now and then, but it's pretty tight because he's got kind of a big extended cab. So every once in a while she has to crawl back there and sit sideways and to get somewhere, but not usually meant for much sitting, and certainly not for a very long distance. But then a king cab or a mega cab usually means that it's actually a 4-door, there's a full seat in the back kind of cab. So it's almost like having a car with a bed on it. So this part's called the bed of a truck, and this part's called the cab of a truck. Okay? So mega cab just means that you've got that extended room in the cab and you're looking at a 4-door situation. So it means you could haul a lot of people as well as cargo. Okay? Now when you look at information, because online sites aren't going to charge you in the same way that a newspaper does, you can usually get a lot more information on an online site. Because you don't have that restriction of, well, if I go over so many lines or go over so many words, I'm going to get charged even more money. Okay? So you can see here, when we talk about cars, a lot of times you talk about year, make, and model. The make of a car is like the manufacturer. So Dodge, Honda, Chevrolet, Toyota, Buick, like the car company. That's what they mean when they say what's the make of the car. The model of the car is then the type of specific vehicle. So this is a Ram 2500. A Honda would be the make, a CRV would be the model, a Toyota would be the make, a Camry would be the model. Okay, that's what model means. And then a year is important because you want to know how old your vehicle is. The somewhat deceiving part about the year of your vehicle is that, so right now we're just starting 2016. The 2017 vehicles will start coming out August. So it's not like they actually wait until 2017 for 2017 vehicles to come out. 2017 vehicles usually come out in the fall of the previous year.
And the prices of the 2016 cars go down?
Yes.
How far down?
If it's still a brand new 2016, probably not as much as you want. If it's a used 2016, then it's going to go down quite a bit more because not only is it older, but it's also used now. But if it's brand new, it's going to go down a bit because usually with a new year, there's going to be slight modifications in that particular model. And so the 2016 isn't going to be quite as, new and fancy as the 2017. And so you'll start seeing discounts depending on the dealer and how much inventory he has. you might get more of a discount because he wants to move 2016 cars out to make room for 2017 cars. So if he's still got a lot of inventory, you might see a bigger sale or a bigger discount to get rid of 2016 cars before 2017 cars come out. Yeah, so usually the fall of the year, if you're looking for a brand new car, is a better time to shop, kind of summer and into the fall, because usually dealers are trying to move the old models out to make room for new models. Okay. And then there's this whole big explanation of this truck. Now, if you did that in the paper, I actually did find, let's see if I can find it here quick. When I went to the Monticello Express, right, my little hometown paper, there wasn't any car ads, but there was a button for like placing an ad. So I thought, oh, well, I wonder what it costs to place an ad in my little old Monticello Express. And so you can see there, they charge $12 for the first 25 words or less, and then 25 cents for each additional word after that. Okay, so they charge by the word. Now, can you imagine if that's what you posted in the Monticello Express? Right? So that's another reason why people don't usually post anything in the paper anymore, is because you can say so much more about your vehicle and try to convince people this is the best vehicle they could possibly want to buy without having to pay so much for it, because online you're not getting charged per word. Okay? And because you don't have that kind of restriction, you'll notice that pretty much everything in this description is full words. There's a few things that are kind of abbreviated, like PWR there. That's usually an abbreviation for power. So you've got a power 6-way pass seat. But here, power windows, power ACC delay, auto headlamps, air conditioning, like back in the day of newspapers, those would be the kinds of things you would abbreviate. So instead of power windows, 2 words, you'd say PW. That would count as 1 word. Okay? And when you look at the first lesson in the book today, as you start working on homework, there's a table there that tells you what some of these kind of abbreviated things actually stand for. But we just don't see them as much now, because you don't have that limitation of how much you can actually say. This would probably be a truck that would be called loaded. When you have a vehicle that has lots of the extras, lots of the upgrades, those kinds of things, then you'll see the word loaded in reference to it. So this is a loaded truck. Okay, just because it's got lots of bells and whistles on it. Okay, so that's one example. Let's take a look at another one. Ooh, the Rolls Royce. Let's look at a Rolls Royce. Luddy-duddy. I feel like I need to hold my pinky up for this one. All right, so this one came off of newcar.com. So now we're not talking used, we're talking new, right? So it's almost $150,000. It's in Highland Park, Illinois. It's got 23,312 miles, so it's probably not brand new. Most likely.
Oh, this is used. It's just called new car because they.
Okay, so we're looking at the used section.
Yeah, I'm looking at the used section.
So just like with a dealer is going to have a new car section and a used car section. So sometimes even if something's called newcar.com, they're going to have a used car section. Okay? Now, something like this, which is 4 years old and only has 23,000 miles on it, you start kind of wondering, like, wow, that's kind of low, which is good, right? Because there's not as much wear and tear on it, but you kind of want to ask yourself why. Is it because it kept breaking down all the time and it was always in the shop so no one could drive it? Is it because it was owned by a 70-year-old person who didn't go out much? Is it because it was a lease car for a corporation that only used it when dignitaries came to town? Like, those would be the kinds of things you would want to be thinking about as you looked at something like the mileage. If it seems unusually high or unusually low for the age of the car, you should at least have that as a question when you go to explore this car more. So why is it only at $23,000? If they give you a reasonable answer, fine, but you should at least ask. Okay? Exterior, interior color, not applicable. What, you colorblind? Or like, why would you not have a color on your car? That's kind of weird. What does it mean if it's an automatic transmission?
It's not a shift.
It's what?
There's no
Lot nicer to drive.
It's not a stick. Yeah, it's a lot nicer to drive. I agree. Mr. Gordon's still trying to get me to drive a stick. So there are two types of transmission. Well, two basic types: automatic and manual. The manual transmission is what they call a stick shift. Right? So you have to push in the clutch, change your gear, and keep going. That's a stick shift. That's manual transmission. An automatic transmission is where you've got it in P and you change it to D and you go. Okay, that's automatic. Now, if you start talking about sports cars, you start getting into options that have sort of a blend of those two. So there are some cars that have an automatic with a manual option on it and weird things like that. But basically, you're going to look for one of those two things. Either it's automatic, which means I go from P to R and I back up. I go from R to D and I go forward. All right, that's automatic. Stick shift is manual. A V12. So V stands for valves. The bigger the number after the V, the more powerful the engine in general. So a V6 is not going to have as much pickup and go power as a V12 does. And the only reason I know that, Mr. Gordon and his dad are both kind of car heads, so I pick up on these things when they have their discussions. But I know that the V's make a difference when you're passing, right? So if you're putzing along and you decide you're going to pass the car that's in front of you, so you want to get out there, pick up speed, get around, and come back in before another car hits you head on, you know, that kind of stuff. A V6 is going to take a little more effort to get up to speed where you can really like pass and get around. A V12 is going to get there and boom, it's not going to take much to really get up to speed. Okay. Body style, it says that this is a sedan. So you have SUVs, sedans, hybrids, trucks, hatchbacks, those kinds of things. Those are all different types of body types, body styles. Drivetrain, RWD. Anybody know what that means? Close. Rear wheel drive. So a rear wheel drive car means that your power is coming from the back of the car. It's the rear wheels that are actually pushing your car forward. Your front wheels don't really have any power going to them. They're mostly there for the steering. Okay? So there are rear wheel drive cars. There are front wheel drive cars where the power is actually going to the front wheels and the rear is just mostly there for steering. There are all-wheel drive cars, AWD, and then there are four-wheel drive cars. Four-wheel drive and all-wheel drive is a little bit different. Four-wheel drive generally means like you're going off-roading. Okay, so you're talking about a real true sport utility vehicle like a Jeep, where you're going over boulders and sometimes you only got like one real good wheel that's actually still in contact with the ground to keep driving. That's a four-wheel drive. All-wheel drive, you have power to all four wheels. And to some extent, if one wheel starts spinning, like on ice, the other wheels will kick in to keep you going. So an all-wheel drive car, you are less likely to spin out or to lose traction because the other wheels will kind of compensate for a wheel that's not getting any traction. Okay? But not to the extent of a four-wheel drive car. A four-wheel drive car, you can literally be like on the side of a mountain practically, and that one wheel will keep you going, kind of thing. Okay, so they're usually a little heavier duty vehicle. VIN numbers. A VIN number is something that is etched into the car. It's fairly permanent, and it is a way of identifying the car. So if you've seen commercials for car sites where you're allowed to like check on the back history of a car, this is how you would check it, is with this VIN number. If you ever go to look at a car where you can't find the VIN number or it looks like it's been scratched out, run as fast as you can. Because it's probably an indication that it's been stolen or somehow illegally obtained. Like, you don't want to have anything to do with it. If you can't find a VIN number on your car, you don't want to have anything to do with it. Because that's usually not a good sign. And one of the things you would check on a VIN number would be the title to it. So there's actually one that I found here, just as a quick example. I love this car. Not that I want to get it, I just think it's funny. A 1995 Volvo for $500. That is a 21-year-old car. I love it. We have a 20-something-year-old truck. It's hysterical. It's Mr. Gordon's truck. But yeah, it just smells like it's 20-some years old. Like, you get in and there's just this like dank sort of, yeah, it's a really old truck. But this is a 21-year-old car. It's a Volvo 850. They want $500 for it. And they even say in the description, I'm pretty sure the head gasket's going bad, but you can still drive it. Okay, so this has got to be someone who either finally came into some money to buy a new car or needs some money and just needs to get rid of this hunk of junk. And it's like, somebody just give me $500 for it and it's yours. And notice here a couple of things. Down here, oh, is that where it was? Oh, no, yeah, right here. I'm asking 500 OBO. Do you know what OBO means? Because you see that a lot on these kinds of ads. Or best offer. So when you see OBO, he's saying, you know, the price that I'm putting is what I'd like to get out of it. But within my own mind, I kind of have a time frame of how I'd really like to get rid of this car. And within that time frame, if someone comes around and offers me $400 and nobody offers me any more, I will probably take the $400 and sell you the car. So OBO is kind of permission to negotiate a little bit. But if someone offers a better offer, then you got to be ready to lose the car. Like, they're going to get it. Whereas if this says 500 firm, then that means he's not moving on it. It's 500 or he's keeping the car. Okay? But here's what I wanted to point out. This is actually a Craigslist for the Cedar Rapids area. And on here, they have these certain categories that I'm sure if you went in and said, I want to sell a car, just this set of categories comes up and you just start typing in answers, or probably some of them are drop-down menus that you start picking what fits. And one of them here is the title status. And it says on this Volvo, the title status is clean. Every car has a title to it. And when you go to buy a car, you need to be able to get the title. Okay? So if a title status is clean, that means there's not going to be an issue with you buying this car and getting the title transferred over to you. Things that could make a title status not clean, if it's stolen, they probably don't even have the title to it. If it has been in an accident, especially if it's had any major body damage to it. That would be something that would make it not clean. By law, you have to report if your car has been in any kind of an accident when you sell it. Especially if it's been totaled. Do you know what it means if your car has been totaled?
So is it when it gets into a pond or something?
Not necessarily. It could be, like that could be a reason for totaling a car. But totaling a car actually means that it's in some sort of an accident or it's been flooded or something like that. And the money that it would take the insurance company to fix it for you is more than what the car is worth. So when that happens, if it's going to take more money to fix your car than what the car is now worth at this point, they say your car is totaled. Now that doesn't necessarily mean it's undrivable. Okay? We had a van that we hit a deer with. And actually it ended up being undrivable, but we actually managed to get from where we hit the deer the rest of the way to school with this car. Now, once we got to school and we turned off the ignition, all of the fluids leaked out and we were done.
Oh.
So we weren't going anywhere until someone came and towed the car back to the shop to fix it. And they ended up trying to tell us that it was going to be totaled. Now, we fought it because it shouldn't have been, and we actually ended up kind of winning on that one. But if your insurance company decides that fixing the car will cost more than what it's worth, they call it totaled, and that ends up on your title. Okay? So when you go to sell it the next time, that has to be reported. And that's where you can go to these car sites, put in the VIN number, and that kind of stuff will come up. So just because Joe Schmo put into Craigslist that it's a clean title, that doesn't necessarily mean it is. So you can go in with a VIN number and check car history to see, has it been reported in any accidents, has any insurance company reported that it's been totaled, anything like that.
Wait, so if you actually total your car, do you usually buy a new car or do you?
Usually, even if the car is still drivable, once it's been totaled, it's not insurable anymore. So you can't get insurance on that car anymore. And in most states, these days, you have to have insurance on your car. It's by law. If you don't, you can be fined and jailed and all kinds of stuff, especially if you end up in an accident and you don't have insurance. So yeah, once a car has been totaled, usually you can, if it's really bad, sell it to a junkyard. If it's fixable, like you could sell it to someone as long as they know, full disclosure, this car has been totaled. But if it's a, gearhead who's like, yeah, I just want to putz with it and fix it and, get it running again and I'm not planning on selling it or whatever, like if it's just for their sort of fun and amusement, they're just never going to get it insured. So there's that kind of thing. Another thing that can cause your title to not be clean is a flooding. Cedar Rapids would be actually a good example of, a 1995 Volvo. If they've been in Cedar Rapids for a while, depending on where they live. Now, this is actually Hiawatha, which is kind of a suburb of Cedar Rapids. But in 2008, Cedar Rapids had a really bad flood because there's a river that runs right through the middle of the town, of the city. And for about 5 blocks, at least 5 to 10 blocks beyond the riverbanks, things got flooded really bad. Like houses, cars, and it happened fast enough that not everyone could necessarily get their cars out or get their possessions out or things like that. So you may have a car that they couldn't move, or even at our house in 2010, we had a really bad flood on the lake. Well, our neighbors, we happened to be gone that weekend, in a way, thankfully. We had a mess to come back to, but because we were gone, we had our vehicle. All but Bryce had our computers with us. Bryce's got destroyed. But we had a really bad flood, and our neighbors went to bed that night thinking that the river had already crested, and so it was going to start going back down. And when it had crested, it wasn't quite to their main level yet, or when they went to bed, it wasn't quite to their main level yet. So they went to bed thinking it was going to start going back down. Well, it didn't. And so in the middle, the next morning, he was telling us about 6 o'clock that like they couldn't sleep, with the water going up, whatever. So they said, we might as well just get up and see what's going on. And he said he swung his feet over the side of the bed and stepped down into water.
Oh.
And when they looked, they had several inches of water in their main level. And by that point, because their main level was a bit up from the ground, it was high enough that they couldn't drive their car because it was up to the windows of the car. So they actually had to have firemen come out with a rowboat and rescue them because that's how high the water was at that point, and it got higher than that yet still. So their car would be a car that got flooded, totally up to the top of the roof, flooded. That's something else that has to be reported. Any flooded car, any wrecked car, anything like that has to be reported and is what could change that status on your title to not being clean anymore. Okay? So those are the kinds of things you want to be looking for, those kinds of details. And I'm going to keep all of these examples because as we go through this chapter, I'm going to use some of these for different problems and different examples that we go through in class. So even though I didn't necessarily use yours today, I probably will at some point. So I'm going to keep these for right now. Couple of things you're going to be asked to do in the homework tonight. One of them, come on, where is it? There it is. So we've talked a little bit about the car ads, some of the vocabulary and abbreviations. When you buy a car, you will most likely be charged sales tax. If you're buying it from a dealer, even though it's a used car, you will pay the sales tax to the dealer, and the dealer will pay that money to the state. Because the sales tax doesn't go to whoever's selling anything, it goes to the state. So a dealer is already set up as a business to pay sales tax to the government based on their sales. So if you're buying it through a dealer, you'll pay your sales tax as an extra amount to the dealer, and he will pay it to the state. But if you buy it from a person, like you're going on Craigslist and you're buying your, 26-year-old Volvo for $500, you don't pay your sales tax to that person because that person is most likely not going to be set up to then send it into the state, nor can you really trust him to send it into the state. Like, he's not going to go, hey, I got an extra $30 here, let's just go have a beer, boys, So when it's from a personal sale, if I remember correctly, on your title, when he gives you the title, there's some place on there that indicates this was just a person-to-person sale. This wasn't a business. And so when you go to get your license plate for that new car, that's when you'll pay your sales tax. Because you'll go to a government office like the courthouse to do that. And that's when they'll charge you your sales tax. When you sell a car, you do not sell the license plate with it. The license plate is registered to a person. It is not registered to a vehicle. So when you sell a vehicle, the license plate should not go with it. When a new person buys that vehicle, they need to go get their own new license plate. And when they do that, that's when they'll get charged sales tax. As far as calculating that sales tax, it's just like what we've already seen in our previous lessons. For example, if we're going to buy that Volvo for $500 in the state of Iowa, there's 6% sales tax. So just like we've seen before, we're going to multiply by a 0.06. That's going to end up being $30. And so if they were asking you something like, you're going to buy the Volvo for $500, there's 6% sales tax, and when you go into the, I think it's the county treasurer that you actually go to get your driver's license, or sorry, your license plate, they're going to charge you $20 for the license plate. So what is the total cost of buying the Volvo? What's the total cost of buying this Volvo?
500 plus the 30 tax plus 20 for license.
So what's that going to be?
So that's 500.
Yeah. So you're ultimately going to end up spending $550 for this Volvo because you've got sales tax and you've got license plates in addition to the selling price. Okay? So that shouldn't be anything new in terms of calculating because we've already seen some sales tax problems. What's new about that or different about that is if it's a person-to-person sale, you don't pay the sales tax to that person. You're going to pay it when you go get your license plates, usually. The other thing I want to talk about really quick is the cost of a classified ad and what that has to do with something called piecewise functions. Okay, so if we go back to the example from my Monticello Express hometown, where we had $12 for the first 25 words or less, and then 25 cents for each additional word. Okay, that's the scenario we're going to work with here for a second. So, let's see if I can get this to work. Oh, no, I'm not plugged in. Let's plug in. There we go. All right, so let's just think about this in a table first of all. Let's think about some different scenarios where I ask you some different numbers of words and you tell me what the cost of the ad's going to be. And this is, remember, $12 for the 25 words or less. And then 25 cents for each additional word. Okay, so let's say, well, let's take the Volvo ad for a second. Where'd it go? Volvo, come back, Volvo. How many words are in that Volvo ad?
Does each number count as a little one?
1995 would probably count all together. 850 would probably count all together. 500 would count all together.
And does punctuation count?
I think 42.
Punctuation does not count. Sorry?
I think 42.
42?
I can't really see though. Okay. Don't go on me.
All right, so 1, 2, 3, we'll count that as 4. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. I can't believe there's no rust on a 26-year-old car in Iowa. What was that to? 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. We'll forget about the call me part. So we'll say 28. So what if this person had decided to run an ad for this car in the Monticello Express? How much would it cost him? How much? So 28 words, $12.75, because we're 3 words over our 25-word limit. So for every word after that, the 3 extra words, it's a quarter each, 75 cents. Add that to the 12 that we're already paying as our base price, and it's going to cost me $12.75, or that guy. Okay? What if I decide...
It's based on.
Surprise.
That's so awesome.
gonna kill me. Hey, I'm in class. Can I call you in like 15 minutes?
Oh, they want to talk to me, don't they?
I gotta finish this lesson. Otherwise, they won't know what to do for their homework.
Hey
Okay,
guys.
fine. Hey, what's up, guys? Pay attention. She knows that she's talking about chemistry in college. I know. Okay, fine. Call me back then.
15 minutes, okay?
Yeah.
All right. Bye. I think you'd figure this time thing out after 2 years, but not quite. All right. So let's say I decide to keep it really short and sweet, because let's face it, it's a crap car and there's not much to say about it. So I do a 10-word. How much is that going to cost me? $12. Let's say I do a 20-word ad. $12. Let's say I do a 25-word ad. Still 12. Let's say I do 30 words.
13 and 25.
$13.25. Because now I'm 5 words over, so at a quarter for each word, that's going to be an extra $1.25 added onto the $12 that was the base price. Okay, how about 40 words? So how many words over are we? 15. So 15 at a quarter each is $3.75. Add that to the 12, we've got $15.75. Okay, so when we look at this, we could say that this is a function, and my function takes number of words and gives me cost. That make sense? Okay? But when you look at this function, it looks like there's 2 different things going on. Part of the function seems to just kind of stay this one price, and then part of the function seems to change as the number of words changes. So there seems to be 2 pieces to this function, which is why something like this is called a piecewise function. Because it's not just one thing going on, it's these 2 different things going on, but they're still part of the same overall function. This function of number of words giving me cost for the ad. So if we were to actually graph this, the first thing we need to realize is I really only need a first quadrant. Is there any such thing as having a negative number of words for my ad?
Mm-hmm.
No. Is there any such thing as a negative cost? Are they going to pay me to put an ad in the paper?
No.
And no. So when I set up my axes here, I'm going to set them up kind of on the edges, or a little closer to the edges anyway. Because what I really need is first quadrant space. Positive number of words, positive cost. And then I need to come up with a decent scale. So, for x's, we kind of went up to about 40 as a max. So let's go, I'm going to go every 2 as being 5. 25, 30, 35, 40. Okay, that's words. And then on my y-axis, I went up to about a 1575. So I'm actually going to go up by, I think I can go by ones. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. Okay? So if I start plotting points, 28 words is going to be right about here. That cost me $12.75. So almost right about there. 10 words, that's right there, cost me $12, right there. 20 words cost me $12 as well, so that's right there. 25 words cost me $12, that's right there. 30 words out here cost me $13.25, so I'm a little bit over that line right there. And finally, 40 words was 1575, right about there. So even my graph, I can start to see how there's these two pieces going on. The first piece is this part where I'm just going 12, 12, 12, 12, 12, out to right there. And then at that point, right, is that 25? Yeah, that's the right point. Okay. My graph changes, and it starts doing that. So again, this idea of two pieces. The one piece is just a horizontal line going across. The other piece is the slanted line that's off on the side. This point right here where those two things change is what we call the cusp. C-U-S-P. That's the cusp of the graph. And that cusp is where the two pieces meet. So this would be the graph of my piecewise function. Now, what would the actual function look like? Well, how many pieces does it appear that I have? How many pieces would you say make up this overall graph? 6 pieces make up this graph? I'm not talking about points. I'm talking about different pieces of the graph. If I said we're going to take a piece of this graph and we're going to put a piece of this graph and we're going to put a piece of this graph, how many pieces would you say we're putting together to make that? 2, right? This piece and this piece. This is a piece of the horizontal line at 12. And this is a piece of a slanted line that's going like this. So because I have 2 pieces, I'm going to need 2 expressions to make up this function. Even though it's one function, for this one situation of taking out a classified add, it's going to require 2 parts to it. And the parts are going to be divided up by the domain. So the first part of the domain is x values up to and including the 25. When x is less than or equal to 25. That's where this part takes place. Because that cusp is here at 25. The second piece takes place for x values that are bigger than 25. And one of the things you have to realize is because this is a function, these 2 pieces cannot have any overlapping points, so you can only include the 25 on one of them. It cannot be included on both. So we've included the 25 with the less than or equal to because of the way the add was worded. Right? 25 words or less. So the 25 seems to be part of the first piece. And then what happens after 25 is the second piece. So what happens in the first piece? If I put any number less than or equal to 25 into this function, what's the cost? 12. That's the first piece. It's not 12x. It doesn't change. We don't need a variable. It's just going to be 12. Okay? But now this part changes. So think for a minute, what did we do to figure out 1325? 0.25 times x times 30? Okay, so it's number of words minus the 25, right? So we're going to take 25 cents, and we're not taking it times number of words. That's what x is. We're taking it times number of words minus 25, because we just want what the additional words are. So this is going to be x minus 25. And then we add that to what? To the 12. That's the expression for the second piece. And then this is the function for that whole piecewise function. There's two parts to it. So now if I were to ask you, so what's the cost going to be for an ad that's 50 words long? Would I want the first part or the second part?
Second part.
Second part, because x being 50 is bigger than 25. So that tells me I have to use this part of the function to get my answer. Or I have to go out here on my graph and figure out my answer from that. There's a couple of problems in the homework that deal with that. Give them a try. If you have questions, we can address them next class. Okay, 5.1, it will be on Canvas. We'll see you guys on Tuesday.